My name is Robert M. Springer Jr., and I'm a retired Army Colonel, '06. My dad was in the service, so he had a job during the whole time of the Depression, so our family didn't really suffer the way a lot of families did. So for me, it was, we weren't really worried or frightened about my dad losing his job. So I'd say I had a very happy childhood, and going from one Army post to the other. And I love the life of being on the Army post, because like most little kids, boys especially, I could see a lot of soldiers. We had parades every weekend, and when I went to bed at night, I could hear taps being played, heard the Reveille cannon in the morning, and a lot of athletics. All the regiments and the organizations all had athletic teams, so there was a huge emphasis on athletics. So I grew up a pretty normal life, except that we traveled a lot. The best part of it was Hawaii. In those days, the Army didn't have horses anymore in the regular troop units because everything was mechanized, but there were still a lot of horses. So there was a great deal of emphasis on horses and horseback riding, so we had horse shows and gymkhanas, and my family, my dad would take us all horseback riding every Wednesday afternoon, the whole family. And in Hawaii there were beaches, and so it was pretty much a normal life, I would say. Well, my dad, he graduated from West Point in 1919. Robert M. Springer, and he was a full colonel. Well, one of the interesting things about his time at West Point, we went during World War I, and they were desperately short of second lieutenants because of the Army expansion for World War I, so he was only at West Point for 18 months. He was graduated after 18 months. But then when the war was over, World War I that is, back in 1918, since he only had 18 months, they sent him back to West Point again for another year. But then he was a lieutenant, but he had to pretend he was a cadet for the classes and everything. And so the other cadets would know that they were cadets, but still officers. They wore orange bands around their hats. So it was called the Oriole class. And then after that, he just had a normal life as a lieutenant in the infantry for the next 10 years. And he eventually, the Army sent him to University of California at Berkeley for law school. So early 1930s, he ended up in the Judge Advocate General's department, and had troop duty after that in Hawaii. And then by the time of World War II, he was a full colonel, and he was sent to Europe as the Deputy Judge Advocate General for SHAPE, for Eisenhower's headquarters. No, because I don't think he knew Eisenhower that well. He was on very close terms with General Wedemeyer. They were best friends, I think. And so he knew Albert C. Wedemeyer. He knew him very well. And I've been out to General Wedemeyer's home many, many times and talked with him. And one time he invited Stauffenberg, the man that tried to kill Hitler with the bomb. Well, he was very close to Stauffenberg's son. So one time they invited him to his home in Maryland. We spent the day with Stauffenberg. By that time he was in the German parliament. So, but he didn't talk much about to it. He was working for Admiral Mountbatten in the China-Burma India Theater. And when the war was over, he had also gone to Georgetown University for international law. So when the war was over, it was decided to have the war crimes trials, and he was stationed there in Europe, and he had requisite academic training, so he was made, taken out of the Army, assigned to the State Department as the United Nations War Crimes Commissioner, working for the United Nations in London. And he and Justice Jackson and others set up the war crimes trials, and the War Crimes Commission acted as an appellate court to review the proceedings of the war crimes trials for legality and make sure that they were properly managed. And so then after that he retired.